current crisis in West Africa has been caused by failed rains, which has impacted on both crops and livestock in the area. It's meant that people who are dependent on both agriculture and pastoralism have a reduced income, and they have a reduced ability to access food. This has created millions of people who are currently vulnerable due to food insecurity. Now, the peak of that crisis hasn't arrived yet. We expect it to arrive in a few months. And we're in a position now where we can prevent the worst of that crisis. We can prevent a lot of people falling into severe malnutrition.
In 2011, we have seen a massive crisis in East Africa, in the Horn of Africa. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the difference between the crisis that we are seeing right now and the crisis that we have seen in 2011 in the Horn.
Really, there is no difference. All the way from West Africa, all the way to Yemen in the Middle East, that whole belt there, it's the same problem. There has not been enough rains, the crops are not as productive, or the agricultural areas are not as productive. And it's caused the same problem, which is too many people and not enough food.
Did we learn something in the crisis in 2011 that we can use now to be better prepared to have a better emergency response in these areas?
I hope, but unfortunately we are still waiting too long to respond. What we learnt in East Africa was that early action prevents the need for sort of the very expensive humanitarian response that we saw, and it prevents the hundreds of thousands of unnecessary deaths that we saw in East Africa. But in West Africa, it still looks as though we might be waiting too long as an international community to respond. Now, Save the Children and many agencies are able to respond, but we're just not getting the money through the system that we need to be able to do so.
How much do we need?
A lot. As the international community,
yeah.
we will need tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. Save the Children's hoping to assist over 1.5 million people, of which we only have 40% of the funds required. We still need tens of millions in order to be able to stop the unnecessary deaths. The problem we're facing and how we achieve both preventing this crisis and some sustainability in this is by ensuring that families and their children have access to food. That access isn't necessarily through distribution. It isn't around distributing large amounts of commodities and food goods. It's about ensuring that families have the ability to access markets which are already functioning. In the short term, the best thing for children is to get money into their families' pockets and food into their livestock. What we need to do is stop the situation that happened in East Africa, where we waited too long, livestock died and crops failed. If we can get seeds and tools out to people through getting them money to be able to procure them from markets, and if we can get livestock to remain and stay alive, then they can continue to support themselves. If we wait, as we did in East Africa, until it is too late, until we're seeing these pictures on the news, then we will be dealing with famine, and this will be a traditional humanitarian response. What we also need to do in the long term is ensure that families and their children have access both to the ability to preserve their livelihoods and their livestock and their crops, that we look at early warning and when we know that this is happening sooner, so we're not in such a rush as we are now. And we also ensure that those who are in an unsustainable area where there are too many people and not enough resources to support that livelihood, that we focus on things like education, so we can retrain people to have a livelihood and create a new life somewhere else where it is more sustainable.